Mario Kart World has a problem. Not with the music, not with the graphics, not with the gameplay. Honestly, most of this game is fantastic, but it has one issue. It's an issue that's very boring, it's very long, it's very straight, but not all the way straight. You know, it's got a little bend in it to the right.
What?
I'm talking about the intermission tracks, sometimes called routes or connecting tracks or highways. These tracks have you start off exiting one course, then you drive the intermission part, which is the part people don't like, and then you finish by driving one lap of a different track. Now on paper, this actually sounds like a great idea for multiple reasons. You fully utilize the massive open world the game has to offer. If exploring in free roam isn't your thing, that's okay. You will still be playing through this expansive map because of the intermission tracks. And because the overworld is so big, there will literally be hundreds of new tracks, each with their own layouts and biomes. It sounds amazing, but the execution for these intermission tracks was done horribly. It's gotten to the point where people are making their own private servers with thousands of players just so they can play in online rooms without the intermissions. They are that hated. But the interesting thing is, because there's over 200 of these tracks, there are a handful that are actually pretty good. A select few tracks that show the astronomical amounts of potential that intermissions have, but ultimately failed to live up to. There are elements scattered throughout these tracks that show flashes of brilliance, but instead ended up as wasted potential. So why are they so hated? Well, at the start I described them as long, straight, and boring, and honestly that pretty much sums it up. The first track we'll look at is the worst offender, Koopa Troopa Beach to Peach Stadium. First, look at the minimap. It is literally just a straight line with no turns, no alternate paths, no fun shortcuts, not even any rails or off-road. We just got ramps. Just like floating ramps. It looks like the set for Wipeout. So all you can do here is spam your trick button and hold A until you actually get to Peach Stadium. Why would you ever want to play this instead of just driving 3 laps of Peach Stadium? And like I said, this is the worst offender because it is just a straight line. The typical average intermission track follows the same blueprint, but it has a couple cars and it's slightly curvier, and when I say curvier, not in a good way. Look at this big turn here. This is a big ring around a pool of lava that you drive through on many intermission tracks. It looks awesome and it feels like a big significant landmark in the world, but when you're driving this curved circular part of the track, you can barely even squeeze out a mini turbo. Most of the time it's better to just tap left or right in the direction you need to go. The track is too big for you to drive on like you should be able to. Then look at the coins and the ramps in the wide line. They are so out of the way. If you're in the back, it might be worth it to go and get an item box, but if you're in the front, you'd just be losing a lot of time. And then there's the enemies. These boom booms look like big obstacles, but they are very easy to avoid. And don't even get me started on this fire bro, like who is getting hit by this guy? Now let's take another example. I just chose this track randomly, Moo Moo Meadows to Mario Circuit. It's the first one I chose. We have another giant turn that's so big that you can barely charge mini turbos. And again, there are enemies that feel obsolete. They don't really do anything. And then there's some rails and power lines to drive on, but like the ramps at the lava ring, these are just out of the way and a lot of the time slower, so there's no point of actually taking these alternate paths. And these examples that I chose show the problems that are on almost every track. You have long straightaways filled with nothing, you have turns that are so big it feels awkward to even drive them, and you have enemies and driving route options that feel like fluff and don't actually do anything. Every one of these intermissions is the same track with a different coat of paint over and over and over and over and 200 times over, which adds to the list of reasons why people don't like them. They're repetitive. They all suffer from the same problems. Take a track like Koopa Troopa Beach. Someone might say that they don't like this track because it's just a circle, it's too simple, there's too many broken easy grass shortcuts to shroom through at the end, and it takes no skill. That is valid criticism. And another person might say they don't like Bowser's Castle because it's too hard, it gets too chaotic. The shortcuts are really good, but they're also really difficult, which creates giant splits in the pack. That's a valid criticism as well. But the complaints you can make about these two different tracks are totally different. These tracks feel different, they play different, they smell different. I would assume so at least. This is a beach and this is a lava castle. The point is, if you had complaints about the normal tracks, they'd mostly all be different. This track's too easy, this track's too hard, there's not enough shortcuts, there's too many shortcuts, it's too long, it's too short, too many rails, these paths don't do anything, too many alternate paths, too many walls, too many enemies, not enough coins, not enough item sets, this shock spot is too strong. There's just a number of reasons. And to reiterate, every intermission at its core has the same problems. The gameplay is either you hold A near the front and get reds, boomerangs, and fireballs spammed at you, or you hold A in the back and back for bullet bills and golden stars and shock. And side note, playing the intermissions like that by bagging for good items is by far the best way to play them. I actually tried this bagging strategy out before making this video. I just played a dozen intermission tracks, hard bagged every one of them, and Yeah, it definitely works. And it's funny because in 8 Deluxe, a lot of people complained about bagging because of how good it is, and it actually got nerfed later on in the game's lifespan, but now it's back and better than ever with intermission tracks. So whether you're bagging in the back or trying to play from the front, the gameplay is kind of the same. You hold A and there's not much to do in terms of driving. Let me repeat that. There is not much to do in terms of driving in the Mario Kart racing game. Now, the unenjoyment of these intermission tracks alone would not be enough to cause this much controversy in the player base, because if nobody likes them, then just don't pick them. Well, if it was only that easy, welcome to Mario Kart World's online versus mode. When you're too good to play against the CPUs, and you're way better than all your friends, or you don't have any friends, you hop into online races and try working your way up the rating system against people around the world. You start off with little Timmy and Jimmy, you're beating them, you're waxing them, you're getting VR every race. You're grinding. Next thing you know, it's 3 a.m., all the Japanese players are online, and you're scared. You know they're sweaty, but you're still beating them. You're getting more VR. Boom, you're making your way up. And then you see them, the clan tags. You're with the big boys now, but it doesn't even matter. You're so locked in to the Mario Kart online grind that you're even beating these tryhards. And that's the Mario Kart online experience. It's been that way since Mario Kart Wii in 2008. You don't want to play against the CPUs. Playing versus other people, sometimes really good people, around the world is way more fun. But this quintessential Mario Kart experience has been ruined by the intermission tracks. This is the track select screen for online. You see how there's some arrows pointed to each track? Well, that means you have to drive to the track, so it's an intermission. You see how all 3 of these options have arrows? Yeah, that means whatever track you pick, you're forced to play an intermission. Now, sometimes a track will pop up that is far away, so it has no arrows, meaning it's a normal 3-lap track. But more often than not, your options are 3 intermissions. Now, you do actually have a 4th option, random. And what's good about random is that whatever track is chosen from it will always be a 3-lapper. So there is a workaround, but it means you rarely have a choice in picking the track that you actually want. So the online meta early on in the game was that everyone would just spam random. And it wasn't even the sweaty comp players either. You would see the low VR players spam it as well. It wasn't a perfect system, but a majority of people around the world were on board with avoiding intermissions. Then the update dropped, version 1.1.2. In the patch notes, it says, adjusted course selected in random when selecting next course in a wireless versus race. What the heck does that mean? Well, it means that even if random is selected, the track picked has a chance to be one of the intermission tracks presented to you in the track select. And it is not a small chance. In my experience, it feels like almost 50% of the time this will happen. So now intermissions are almost inescapable. And remember, this was an update, so Nintendo saw the distaste for intermissions and doubled down on it, saying, no, we're gonna force you to play these. And that's where we are today. Hello, post-editing Rerim here. So, a couple things. Firstly, when making this video, a number of other creators also made videos on intermission tracks and why they are so bad and disliked, and I really can't overstate how much the general community dislikes them. It's not everyone, but it is a large enough portion of the player base where this really is the biggest talking point about the game. And also, the more videos like these and like mine that pop up, the more the average player will grow to dislike them in the same way. Secondly, in the time of editing this video, there was actually another update, version 1.2.0, and among the list of changes we have a line that reads, increase the frequency of lap type courses appearing in the selection when choosing the next course in versus race and wireless races. All this means is that the frequency of the course select screen looking like this online, where there is one 3-lap track available, has slightly increased. So now the estimated percentage amount of time you'll have this option is like 35%. At first, people thought that online would improve, but this really is only a small increase, and it did not revert the change they made to the random option, so even though there is another update, not too much has actually changed. Back to the video. And that's where we are today. No one really wants to play online, and this has been forcing people to make their own servers like this one, which has nearly 50,000 members, where people link up, they play in massive 24-player private fun rooms, and they can pick whatever 3-lap track they want. And the competitive lounge server is also growing every day. It's where you go when you really want to sweat and try hard, but intermission tracks are banned there, so even a more casual player might be more inclined to start playing there more often. It sucks because jumping into an online race is such an easy thing to do, and the way the VR system works is that it's very difficult to gain once you hit the 9,000s. So actually trying to push for a high VR could be a really fun challenge that doesn't involve coordinating with people on Discord, but not fun enough for a lot of people to endure the mindless gameplay of intermissions all day. And this could easily all be fixed if Nintendo just added the track select button that is available in the private rooms. Sure, more tracks would be picked than others, but hey, if people want to spam Koopa Troopa Beach 10 races in a row, then give the people what they want. Now, I've complained a lot about intermissions because I played them a lot. When the game first dropped, I was spamming online races with my friends, and intermissions were still getting picked a lot early on. I also played all the Grand Prix and KO Cups multiple times through to get 3-star rank on each one of them, which does nothing, by the way. And I've also experimented on whatever random intermissions myself to explore for shortcuts. And in all that playtime, I have found some intermissions that show potential. They show what could have been, how intermissions could have been great.
Make intermissions great again.
Now, I'll start off with Acorn Heights to Boost Cinema. It's widely considered to be the best, most fun interactive one. And the reason being, it has turns. Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. It has some turns, so you're actually drifting and you're not driving in a straight line. You're getting mini turbos out, and you can cut off those turns with mushrooms. Then later in the track, you have this boardwalk section that is similar to the old Ghost Valley tracks. And again, they're turns, they're sharp turns. It feels like a real track. And that's it. The bar is really low. This track still isn't as good as most of the normal tracks, but hey, it's something. This track demonstrates that people just want something to do instead of hold A. There are other intermission tracks with cool sections like Cheap Cheap Falls to Dandelion Heights. You have this winding, zigzaggy section that really sticks out in the minimap. I even remembered what intermission this was specifically because of this section here, but it's such a small section and the rest is back to boring. If these tracks felt fun and interactive the whole way through, then people would not mind the intermissions. Look at Mario Circuit and Rainbow Road. Those tracks are not typical 3-lap tracks. They are 1 lap with multiple sections, kind of like intermissions. Mario Circuit is full of constant twists and turns and dirt cuts. And Rainbow Road actually does have quite a bit of driving in a straight line doing nothing. But it also has split paths, shortcuts, a water section, and many parts where you are cruising in a permanent boost. And it's also by far the longest track, which in a way makes it feel different. Nintendo was trying to cook with these connecting roads, but they just didn't give it enough sauce to make it palatable. They just needed to make them a little bit better. But the intermission straight line portion was not the only thing wasted, in my opinion. After every intermission track, you play a single lap of one of the regular tracks. Except sometimes you don't. Sometimes you play that track backwards, and sometimes you take an entirely different route. For example, Airship Fortress to Shy Guy Bazaar. Once you get to Shy Guy Bazaar, you drive in the market section in reverse. Then instead of continuing to the normal path in reverse too, you drive through Daisy's Palace. This is not Shy Guy Bazaar anymore. This is a totally new track. A new layout with branching paths and new strategies. It's so refreshing. Crown City is the same way, where you can drive to an entirely new layout. And then Wario Stadium, Moo Moo Meadows, Koopa Troopa Beach, Desert Hills, and Mario Bros. Circuit are all tracks that you will sometimes drive a lap in reverse on, making them also feel like totally new tracks. I really like this concept, so I started messing around, trying to find shortcuts on these backwards tracks, and I also saw other people on Twitter doing the same thing. They're so cool, but they're locked behind these random intermissions that you would have to memorize if you even wanted to play them. Brand new tracks with their own shortcuts and strategies that some players probably don't even know exist. You can't time trial them, so you can't really practice them, and in free roam, the out of bounds boundary doesn't exist, so you don't really know exactly where you're supposed to go, so you don't really know if what you're doing would work in the track. This had me thinking, why didn't they do this on every track? If you go to free roam, there are tons of routes and winding roads and paths to take that are not part of the main track. Why is the backwards variation only done a few times and the new variation only done twice? It doesn't make sense why they didn't do more of this. In a new layout, not everything would have to be perfectly connected. There are invisible boundaries and signs and barricades everywhere on the normal course. You don't need a perfectly flowing masterpiece, just lock off sections that you don't want people to drive them and force them on the path that you want. When you think about it, it's kind of crazy that they didn't do this. They designed this massive world, and each of the 30 tracks has a ton of extra paths to drive through and stuff to do around the track. And these new routes already exist. Just look at DK Pass, for example. Let's say instead of being at the starting line, you start a little bit behind it. And then you take this path off to the left, and you drive up these ramps, which aren't used at all in the main track, but are really cool and have their own identity and feel different. And then you keep driving, drive up this hill, get a nice little ramp, kind of a more narrow path, and now you're spat back out onto the main road. Okay, we're driving this backwards. And DK Pass does have a backwards variation where they do this. So you keep driving, cool shortcut, keep driving down the main road, and this would normally lead you all the way back to the starting line, but what if instead of doing that, you veered off to the left here? And now we have yet another cool little ramp, a nice little part with stands. You could go in the stands, It's a little bit tighter, and then you loop back around, and boom, there's your new lap. There's your new track. You see what I'm saying? Now, not everything in that example was completely polished and perfect and nicely scaled, but in development, they would just make it nicely scaled. They would just make it better. The more I think about it, the more it makes sense. And then I thought of something else, mirror mode. Now, this is gonna be a bit of a conspiracy, but why does mirror mode feel so tucked away? It feels kind of hidden and not part of the main game. The requirements are so arbitrary and unclear. You have to complete every knockout in Grand Prix Cup on 150, and then hit 10 P switches, collect 10 Peach medallions, hit 10 question panels, then go back and beat the Special Cup on 150 again. Every previous Mario Kart game just had you win on each of the cups on 150 to unlock mirror. It's strangely harder and different to unlock, and then when you do unlock it, it feels useless. There's no reason to even play this offline because it doesn't unlock anything else. It just feels like a legacy thing that they kind of threw into the game late in development because it's something easy that they know how to do. You have the idea of the backwards alternate tracks that were kind of implemented. They were implemented on a few of them, and maybe they wanted to do more, but they just weren't fully fleshed out. And then you have mirror mode, which feels like kind of a last minute weird addition to the game. And this is the conspiracy. What if they were trying to make mirror mode backwards variation? What if that was the game plan and it just kind of fell through? And so they made it work on a couple of the bigger, more complex tracks, and then they just kind of said, this is too hard, or it's not working on this track, it won't work here, and they gave up. Am I crazy? Even if I am crazy, does that not sound like better? Does that not sound awesome to give every track 2 or 3 or 4 variations? That way you have all these intermission tracks, and inevitably, even if you did give intermissions the sauce, they would still feel a little bit the same. So you just make the ending of each track different. You have one where you go backwards, one where you're going normal, one where it takes this route, and one where you take that route. Every track feels different. It would be so good. Go to free roam right now in any track. There's always gonna be backwards ramps and backwards routes and rails that work when driving backwards, but that's only useful in free roam. They don't utilize that in the main game. There's just so much wasted potential. And instead we have these intermission tracks that are straight lines whole day, they're boring, nobody likes them, and most importantly, they are being forced on us. Hello, post-editing, Reroom here again. So somehow, when making this video and thinking about these possibilities, I didn't realize that Nintendo still actually could change the intermissions. Now, I don't think they could change the straight line portions. Ideally, like I said before, you would have to give those tracks a lot of spice, a lot of zigzags, a lot of turns, some elevation changes, alternate routes, a bunch of cool stuff, but I don't think they're gonna terraform the entire Mario Kart world overworld. But changing the endings actually is possible. All they would need to do is, like I said, make some invisible walls and barricades for the new route, or just have some of them be driven backwards. And that would be a pretty easy thing that they could do. Just throw a couple extra bigger ramps, maybe some reverse gliders, and boom, a bunch of tracks become fully playable backwards. Now, I don't think this is something that will happen, but I didn't realize when making this video that that is actually possible. Now, I'll end this video in post as well. Let me know what you think about the intermissions. Are they that bad? I think they are, personally, because I like playing the standard tracks online and practicing the shortcuts and strats and backspam and item play. I like playing them and learning the ins and outs of the tracks. But for intermissions, those things are limited, and that experience for me is less fun. And let me know what you think about my mirror mode conspiracy. Do you also like the backwards and alternate tracks? When I first found out about them, I really dove deep to practice them and learn more about them like the normal tracks, and I think it's a great addition that they should have done more with, and maybe one day they will. Alright guys, I'll talk to y'all later. Thanks for watching. See ya.